Revenge with Karen.
You're still using the legacy config file. Darren snorted, arms crossed, standing in the middle of a war room Ava built by hand. 10 engineers froze. No one looked at her. She didn't flinch. Just sipped her lukewarm coffee and nodded. The config file in question. It had just prevented a $2.4M outage by rerouting dependencies Darren's team didn't even know existed. But sure, make it about the file, not the fact that the CTO had nearly greenlit a full deployment with broken schema logic. That was week 4 of Darren Cole's reign. Week 5, the series closed, champagne, slide decks, Darren on a barstool bragging about leaning into velocity. Ava didn't go. She was fixing the build server because Darren's handpicked architect accidentally nuked a permission tree, trying to impress investors with real-time CI/CD stats. A fix she executed remotely, while feeding her cat and reordering ibuprofen at 2:13 a.m. By then, she had started counting how many times Darren said innovative in public versus how often he actually read a line of code. Spoiler, the ratio was north of 50-0. Before Darren, Ava had led the product backend team for 6 years. She wasn't flashy. She didn't keynote. She didn't schmooze. But her fingerprints were in every endpoint, every cron job, every damned autoscaler that saved them when traffic spiked on launch days. She was a ghost in the codebase, quiet, ever-present, and holding the roof up with both hands while everyone else danced below. She knew the business better than most of the founders. Not because she cared about equity, but because she was there when they couldn't make payroll, and she offered to skip her own. No fanfare, no drama, just pay the juniors first. They remembered that. Darren didn't. Darren only remembered the word legacy and treated it like a synonym for replaceable. By week 6, Darren had announced a team optimization initiative. Read, old timers out, his fraternity of startup sycophants in. Ava was promoted to strategic systems consultant. Same office, same workload, no direct reports. Calendar was suddenly dotted with ones labeled sync with middle managers who spoke fluent buzzword, but needed hand-holding through basic dependency mapping. It wasn't just insult. It was erosion. She stopped getting pulled into roadmap meetings. Feature sign-offs happened without her. Darren even swapped the Git repo's default branch without informing the backend team, and when Ava pointed out the merge conflicts piling up like unpaid parking tickets, he replied, "Worry, we're moving fast." The real knife came wrapped in pastel HR language. Ava got an email with a friendly compliance update reminding her to re-sign the company's NDA and IP agreement due to post-series a realignment. The attachment came from Darren's office. She opened it while eating her 4th stale biscotti of the week. Clause 7.3 looked off. So did Clause 7.4. Joint IP transferability, language about reversionary control in cases of mutual separation. It was subtle, legally dense. But she saw it, because she always read the fine print. She didn't say anything. She signed, printed it, filed it, and opened a new folder on her personal drive titled Hydra Eggs, because that's what it was, a nest of tools, notes, and patents Darren didn't even realize he was standing on. The worst part, Darren genuinely believed she was going quietly. She'd take her strategic consultant role, coast to retirement, and send the occasional Slack emoji during Sprint RetroS. He even smiled when he passed her desk. Patted her shoulder once, said, "You're the backbone here, Ava. Legacy matters." She went home that night, fed her cat, and reread every sentence of the NDA and IP doc. Then she printed a second copy and underlined something Darren obviously hadn't read. Something that would, in time, become the rope he handed her with his own damn smile. But for now, she nodded, drank her coffee, and let him run his little circus. Duct-taped spaghetti, Darren said into the mic, grinning like he'd just invented sarcasm. The engineers around him laughed, some because they wanted to, most because they had to. Ava sat at the back of the off-site conference room, cradling a paper cup of coffee that tasted like printer ink and missed deadlines. Projector behind Darren lit up with a slide labeled, "Refactoring the Future." Bullet points danced across the screen, microservices, modular logic, velocity. No mention of Ava. No mention of who had written the spaghetti he now mocked in front of 80 people, and a live stream camera beaming to investors. Never mind that spaghetti had kept their billing API from flatlining 3 quarters in a row. Never mind that half the backend Darren was crowing about refactoring still ran on functions Ava had written 5 years ago, while her dad was dying in hospice, and she'd been debugging a Stack Overflow between visits. He kept going. We're moving away from the legacy crutches. No more emotional attachment to code. It's time to move with purpose. Translation: I need room for my guys. And his guys were already moving in like a frat house takeover. Dwayne, former coworking buddy of Darren's, was now VP of Infra Innovation. Madison, whose resume boasted more product demo TikToks than shipped features, was somehow Ava's new collaborative interface strategist. Even Ethan, a junior DevOps bro who once submitted a pull request that broke every test in CI, had been elevated to system cohesion architect. Ava, on the other hand, now reported to nobody. Her title: Strategic Support Consultant, Systems Continuity. What did that mean? Darren shrugged when she asked. You're an expert. We want your input across lanes. High level, not in the weeds anymore. Weeds. That's what he called the lifeblood of a product that still served half their paying clients. But Ava didn't argue, not out loud. She just smiled, like a woman watching termites quietly hollow out the floorboards under a house someone else was bragging about flipping. The next week, manila folder appeared on her desk. No email, no context. Just a post-it, hey, quick updates for compliance. Appreciate the signature. D. Inside, a new packet. NDA reaffirmation, arbitration clause tweaks, boilerplate ethics language. And buried on page 17, a subtle but potent revision to the IP ownership section, clause 9.2b. Joint contributions to novel architecture resulting in product-facing deliverables shall be considered transferable intellectual property in the event of team realignment or contributor exit, pending mutual documentation. Legalese for, if you build it here, we keep it, even if you leave. Most people would have signed without reading. Ava didn't. She read it twice, flipped to the appendix, and found the revised clause Darren had added to simplify IP alignment across cross-functional pods. He'd done it sloppily, overreaching with language that assumed silence meant consent, and lumped legacy schema into joint authorship without tracing version history. It was a bluff, an ugly one that could be reversed with version control logs, server timestamps. Even the signed prototype registration Ava had quietly filed with the USPTO 8 months earlier under a different entity, an entity she controlled. Still, she signed it, in a black pen, slow strokes, her name neat and calm. Then she closed the folder, walked it to Darren's glass-walled corner office, and laid it gently on his standing desk. He looked up, mid-conference call, Bluetooth headset in one ear, AirPod in the other. Thanks, Ava. Appreciate you being a team player. She smiled again, wider this time. Always happy to support strategic growth, she said, then turned and walked out as Darren gave her a lazy thumbs up. He didn't know he'd just handed her the fuse. And Ava already had the match. Her departure email was 4 sentences long, no emojis, no teary thank you tour. Just, effective Friday, I'll be stepping away to explore new opportunities outside the company. Grateful for the time spent here and proud of what we built. That last line was deliberate, we built, a reminder for anyone still paying attention. By Monday, her name was gone from the org chart. Her Slack account was deactivated. Her badge no longer beeped green at the entrance gate. And Darren, he didn't send a farewell message. He didn't even acknowledge her exit in the Monday all-hands. But he did mention something else. Team resilience in the face of legacy turnover. Legacy turnover. That was the phrase he used to describe her 12 years of infrastructure engineering, crisis patching, and patching those patches during holiday weekends, while Darren was probably curating his personal brand on Medium. In hushed huddles, he floated the same refrain. She was tired, burned out, couldn't keep up with the pace of innovation. It worked. Most people bought it, not because they believed it, but because disbelief required effort. And in tech, tension is currency. Ava was gone. Darren was still cutting checks. Ava's closest teammates got the message too, though not from Darren directly. It came through HR coaching sessions and vague calendar invites labeled culture alignment. One junior backend dev told her over Signal, they said they're just trying to maintain optics. It's not personal. Ava just replied, of course it isn't. Then deleted the app for good. She didn't post on LinkedIn and update her status. No dramatic career pivot post with a sunrise stock photo and hashtags about new beginnings. She just vanished, at least to the public. Privately, she got to work. Within 3 weeks, she had registered a Delaware LLC under the name Obsidian Torch Holdings. Nondescript. No social footprint. But under that LLC, she filed formal ownership transfer of a dormant but previously drafted prototype compression framework that leveraged data pathways in a way even Darren hadn't grasped when she first mentioned it in a half-baked product idea 2 years prior. It had been too complex for the roadmap then. Not flashy enough, the PM had said. But Ava had kept it, refined it, quietly archived each iteration under version backups linked to her personal IP vault. Now it belonged to Obsidian Torch. She spent the next month consulting, lightly. No big contracts, nothing traceable. Just enough to keep her hands busy and her ears open. Occasionally, she'd take meetings under a pseudonym. Ava Ramirez wasn't gone, exactly. Just ghosted from the feeds Darren monitored. And she was watching. Quietly. She tracked product demo footage. Watched Darren present Project Hydra at a private investor dinner in Palo Alto, pretending he didn't stumble over every acronym. She noted the date his new architecture got its first code pushed to prod, on a branch that contained 2 of her original recursive map functions, lazily renamed but structurally identical. She took screenshots, logged timestamps, downloaded Git diffs, slowly, carefully, methodically. Every breadcrumb he left she collected like dry kindling. No anger, no outbursts, just a soft, constant hum of preparation. In a rented apartment in Oakland, Ava pinned a single sheet of paper above her monitor. It was a clause. From the IP doc Darren had so casually handed her 6 months earlier. She highlighted one sentence in red: misattribution or derivative deployment of covered schema constitutes material breach and reversion shall apply. Then she wrote in small pen beneath it, they don't read what they write, but I do. And beneath that, wait, watch. Strike. The time the first press release went live about Series B prep, Ava had already drafted the demand letter. Not to send, not yet, just to know it was ready. The first time she heard him say it out loud was during a tech podcast interview. Darren, voice syrupy with fake humility, said, Project Hydra was a total ground-up rebuild. No legacy baggage, just clean innovation. Ava paused the episode and stared at her laptop screen for a moment. Then, mechanical calm, rewound 10 seconds and played it again. Ground-up rebuild, no legacy baggage. She didn't laugh, she didn't scream. She just opened her archive drive and clicked into the folder named Hydra Org Root. Inside, 14 subfolders, 6 years of architecture diagrams, unit tests with her initials, database schema notes in her handwriting, exported from her Notion before she left. The original service mesh prototype, timestamped 2.5 years before Darren even joined the company. He hadn't just stolen her code, he'd stolen her language. The next month, Hydra was everywhere. Investor briefings, blog posts, even a product demo sizzle reel that opened with a black screen and white letters, a revolutionary leap forward in data orchestration. The animation that followed, a visualized data flow system Ava had sketched on a whiteboard during a winter hackathon, still had the photo. In it, someone had drawn a cat next to her name. She remembered laughing about it with the only junior engineer who still messaged her from a personal account. That engineer had quietly sent her a photo of the new office mural last week, Hydra's architecture blueprint painted on the wall in Darren's signature teal. Same layout, same flow, different names. Ava started screenshotting everything. She pulled commit histories. Most of the Hydra repo was now locked behind permissions, but caching APIs had left enough residue to reconstruct function trees. She mapped it all by hand, every route, every renamed class, every stolen structure disguised under new buzzwords. Meanwhile, Darren was parading Hydra like a newborn he'd delivered himself. At a demo day, he claimed it was inspired by legacy, but fully re-envisioned through agile forward lens. The crowd clapped. VC interest surged. Ava's inbox started to change. First, it was little messages from ex-colleagues. Hey, wasn't that your schema diagram? Didn't you propose something like Hydra before? Be honest, how much of this is actually yours? She replied to none of them, but she saved every message. Labeled, indexed, archived. Her lawyer, Stephanie, had been waiting. They met in a quiet corner booth at a hotel bar near the ferry building. Ava slid a USB across the table. Stephanie didn't speak for a long time after opening the folder structure. Her fingers just hovered over the trackpad, scanning, reading, pausing, clicking deeper. Finally, she exhaled. You didn't tell me it was this airtight. Ava sipped her water. I wanted you to see it for yourself. Stephanie clicked again. These are version logs, timestamps. You've got Slack threads here that reference the IP handoff. Darren's signature is in there too. Page 17. Stephanie pulled the PDF, highlighted clause 9.2b. Her lips tightened. "This isn't just misuse," she said. "This is reversion territory." "I know," Ava said quietly. He didn't. From that moment, it became surgical. Stephanie initiated a quiet discovery phase, soft probes, no legal letterhead. She contacted Darren's assistant posing as a potential corporate compliance consultant, just to get a look at the language they were using in VC decks. Ava, meanwhile, built a timeline, living dossier of theft wrapped in arrogance. Every time Darren stepped on a stage or ran his mouth on a podcast, Ava added a timestamp and pulled the transcript. By February, she had cataloged 38 discrete instances of public misattribution, 11 code excerpts lifted near verbatim, 3 product decisions rooted in functionality she designed, tested, and shelved due to ethical concerns Darren hadn't even considered. And then came the tipping point. A mid-tier investor panel, Darren was asked directly how much of Hydra was influenced by pre-existing architecture. He didn't blink. "None. It's all original." That night, Ava added one final line to her folder's master index. "They always lie on camera. That's what makes it legal." Stephanie sent her a text the next morning. "Packet's nearly ready. Just say when." Ava didn't reply right away. She opened her blinds, let the sun hit her face, and smiled, not with triumph, with patience. The kind of smile you wear when you know the blade is already in place, just waiting for gravity. By March, the headlines were writing themselves. Hydra secures spotlight ahead of Major Series B, a game changer in enterprise data routing. The future of scalable systems is already here, and it's called Hydra. Ava read them all with the same detached expression you'd wear while watching your ex accept an award for a poem you wrote together in high school. Only this wasn't art, it was infrastructure. And Darren was standing on a stage built with her blood, sweat, and command line magic, waving to cameras like he'd birthed the whole thing from his forehead, like a Greek god of enterprise architecture. The $80 million wasn't locked yet, but you could smell it in the air. Investor decks flying around, leak-friendly tweets from the company's head of brand, and Darren himself giving a keynote at a private VC salon in Menlo Park. Ava saw the footage, him strutting in a minimalist blazer, gesturing at a looping diagram behind him, a Hydra head morphing into a distributed cluster model. Same visual flow she'd used in her old deck for the Data Pulse initiative. He didn't even bother changing the quadrant colors. He took a screenshot and added it to her growing file under the folder, Theater. That's when the messages started again. But this time, they weren't just polite check-ins or nostalgia bombs. They were confessions, whispers from inside the walls of a house built on someone else's blueprints. "Hey, between us, were you the one who built the traffic sharding tool Hydra's using? Because I swear the core logic looks like your old Spike. You remember that JSON interpreter module from 2021? Pretty sure it's running in Hydra's new middleware. I recognized your formatting. It's uncanny." He's telling investors it's all net new. But those of us who were there, we know. Ava didn't say much in return. A simple, "appreciate you saying so," or sometimes just a thumbs up. She didn't need to correct the record herself. People were starting to do it for her. Favorite was a screenshot someone sent from the internal team Slack. #infrabackend junior dev 21, Suo. Anyone else notice that half of Hydra's clean architecture is basically the old legacy routing engine 2.0? Systems Ca, SHHH. Darren might hear you. Senior Dev 42, Ava built that. Darren just put lipstick on it. Message deleted by admin, that one went into the evidence indirect folder. Surprised Ava wasn't how shameless Darren was, it was how predictable. He believed his own PR, truly. He thought if he repeated innovation often enough, the source code would forget who wrote it. But code doesn't forget. Git logs don't forget. Version histories, archived commits, timestamp design proposals, they're not susceptible to charm or keynote flair. And neither was Ava's attorney. Stephanie's prep had shifted into second gear. Quiet phone calls with IP auditors. Private inquiries sent through third-party counsel. Legal language was being sharpened, not for war, but for precision strikes. And Ava, she took up swimming again. Early mornings, no phone, just laps. Stroke, breathe, turn over and over, while the world spun faster around a lie wearing her shoes. One morning after practice, she checked her email. A new message from someone she hadn't heard from in years. Subject, "I owe you an apology." It was from Raj, a former product lead who'd once laughed when she warned about Hydra's ethical gray zones. He'd taken a job elsewhere. The message was short. I just saw the internal investor packet. They're claiming patentable IP status on the recursive prioritization queue. I was in the room when you built that. You even named the function after your cat, remember? It's still called LunaStack. Ava smiled without teeth. LunaStack. Left it in. The thing about arrogance is it makes you sloppy. And Darren had been slurping up praise for so long, he forgot there were fingerprints on everything he touched. She typed a reply, "Thanks, Raj, that helps. P.S. Luna says hi." And then she went back to her inbox, calmly opened the email from Stephanie marked "Final Review Go/No Go," and clicked Open. A new window bloomed on the screen, cease and desist language, licensing demand structure. One elegantly crafted clause about equity clawbacks under misattributed IP deployment. It wasn't revenge. Not really, it was reclamation, and it was almost time. The first move was quiet, almost polite. Stephanie sent an email to the company's general counsel, subject line plain as white bread, inquiry regarding license acknowledgement legacy architecture elements. The body was surgical. No accusations. No threats. Just a soft pressure point, gently applied. She included 3 exhibits, a list of schema functions overlapping with the Hydra system, timestamps from Ava's original designs, and a scanned signature from Darren himself on the clause Ava had underlined nearly a year ago. It was the legal equivalent of tapping someone on the shoulder before dropping a piano. No response for 3 days. Then came a dismissive reply. Not even from the GC directly, just a mid-tier associate with a Gmail account linked to an outside compliance firm. We've reviewed the attached materials. At this time, we do not find compelling overlap. Our architecture is proprietary and materially distinct. Please consider this matter closed. Stephanie forwarded it to Ava with a single comment. They think this is your first rodeo. Ava didn't reply. She just opened the final folder in her archive, day 0, began triple-checking the contents. Stephanie had already run it past 2 IP consultants and a litigator who specialized in pre-IPO infringements. The consensus was unanimous. The case was nuclear grade, not just strong, strategically catastrophic. And yet, Darren kept strutting. Hydra's rollout was going full speed. A new press release announced partner beta onboarding. Mock-ups of the investor deck leaked to Tech Insider, showcasing glowing bar graphs, fraction stats, and a quote from Darren. "We didn't iterate. We reimagined." Ava watched the clip on mute while eating cereal. Stephanie had timed everything perfectly. The Series B closing call was set for Thursday, 10:30 a.m. A multi-party video meeting between the executive team, counsel, and 3 lead VCs who were prepared to wire in tranches of $20 million apiece. So Stephanie scheduled the delivery for 10:24 a.m. Not an email, not a phone call. A courier, real envelope, legal paper, delivered in person to their corporate suite on the 19th floor of a glass fortress in Soma. Inside, a full cease and desist packet, bound and signed. It included a demand for acknowledgement of IP ownership and usage, a proposed license structure retroactive to Hydra's first deployment, a royalty rate of 3.75% per transaction volume, formal equity clawback trigger based on Clause 9.2b of the signed IP transfer memo, now backed by timestamps, logs, Slack threads, and 2 notarized witness statements. A 7-day deadline for response prior to injunctive filing. The final page, a direct quote from Darren during a podcast. This was all built from scratch, no legacy influence, highlighted in yellow. Stephanie didn't label it Exhibit A. She labeled it Delusion, documented. As the courier left the building, Ava was miles away, seated in a corner booth of a half-empty diner in a lambda, a cup of black coffee steaming in front of her. She had no laptop, no phone on the table, just a printed page of the license summary she knew would melt through the boardroom like acid through drywall. She didn't touch the coffee, just watched the steam curl like smoke from a fuse. At exactly 10:32 a.m., her phone buzzed. One word from Stephanie, delivered. Ava took a slow sip of coffee, finally. She didn't smile, not yet. The conference room had a view of the bay that people paid 7 figures to pretend they didn't stare at. Sunlight cut through the glass like it knew who mattered. Darren stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, collar undone just enough to say "I hustle," but not so much to seem unprofessional. His voice had that eager, caffeinated rhythm, flinging terms like liquidity event, platform moat, and zeroed one. VCs nodded along, politely clocking every buzzword with Harvard-tier poker faces. He didn't see her at first. Ava had entered with Stephanie 2 minutes before the scheduled closing. No fanfare, no introductions. The receptionist had paused but didn't question Stephanie's presence because she walked like someone who'd been expected, not invited. Ava wore black. No jewelry, no statement bag, no attempt to look like anything other than a shadow that had simply stepped out of the background. She took a seat at the far end of the table, quiet as a legal dagger. Darren's voice faltered mid-sentence when his eyes finally met hers. A microglitch. One beat too long on her face. The room caught it. One of the investors glanced over, eyebrows twitching toward curiosity. Stephanie waited, patient, practiced. When Darren moved to resume his pitch, the rollout schedule aligns with Q3, she slid the envelope across the polished walnut table. It made a soft WHFFFT as it came to rest in front of him. He stopped, looked down. One sentence, spoken with calm, judicial clarity. Please note the enclosed documents regarding IP license and reversionary clauses executed under signature last April. Silence. Like oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Darren didn't move. Lead VC, a man named Vish Rao, picked up the envelope. He didn't ask permission, he just opened it. First page, the signed clause, Darren's own signature sharp in blue ink. Second page, the structural match map, Hydra's architecture laid over Ava's schema, color-coded. Third page, the cease and desist. Fourth, the royalty demand. Fifth, the equity clause. It was methodical, clinical, designed not to argue but to demonstrate. Is this real? Vish asked. Voice flat. Stephanie didn't look at Darren. She looked directly at the VCs, fully documented, verified by external counsel. The clause was enacted under mutual agreement. The product, Hydra, contains materially identical core logic authored by Ms. Ramirez prior to separation. Without license or attribution, reversion applies. Darren tried to speak. His mouth moved, but no sound came out at first. Then finally, this is a misunderstanding. Systems evolved organically. Stephanie lifted a finger. Not rude, just absolute. Mr. Cole, your podcast statement is Exhibit 4. Your quote was, Hydra was built from scratch. No legacy influence whatsoever. Your words directly conflict with the written record. The second VC leaned forward. Wait, she built Hydra? She architected its foundation. The current product would not exist in its deployable form without her IP. Vish turned to Darren, who said she had no involvement. You said the new stack was original. Darren was sweating now, not visibly. But Ava could see it, tiny changes. His hand twitching near his watch band, his thumb fidgeting with the folder flap, a sudden need to blink too often. Stephanie calmly added, We're not here to interrupt your process. But if this deal closes without a licensing agreement, we will file for injunctive relief, which includes a provisional halt on IP-bound functionality, pending resolution. Translation, close the round and the lawsuit hits the wire before your champagne glass. The VCs said nothing, but their body language cracked, pens dropped, tablets shifted. The third one, the quiet one with the notepad and the Stanford ring, spoke up. How long have you known? Ava finally answered. Her voice was level, cool, unshaken. Since the day he handed me the clause. And that was all. He didn't raise her voice, didn't wave receipts, didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Because in that room where money talked, where power flexed, where image mattered more than function, truth had finally arrived wearing a silence that couldn't be ignored. And her name was Ava Ramirez. The company's general counsel was an older man named Leon Hayes, stoic, calm, the kind who spoke in paragraphs, but only when necessary. Normally, Leon was unshakable, handled merger disputes, founder blowouts, even a crypto scandal that nearly tanked a subsidiary last spring. But 10 minutes into reading Ava's packet, his face turned the color of printer paper. He didn't say anything, just turned page after page, highlighter trembling slightly in his grip. Clause 9.2b was right there, under Darren's own revision header. It stated, in painfully clear language, that in the event of misattribution, derivative misuse, or omission of credit tied to covered schema or architectural frameworks, the originating party retains reversionary control and royalty enforcement rights. Darren had labeled that section as a standard compliance update when he sent it out. Leon looked up slowly, glasses perched low on his nose. You added this? He asked Darren, his voice nearly whisper-soft. Darren blinked. I pulled language from a standard IP alignment doc. Legalese. You've used similar boilerplate before. Leon didn't respond. He just removed his glasses, folded them, and placed them on the table like a surgeon preparing for a difficult procedure. You added it, he said again, firmer. But she signed it. Darren's neck flushed. She didn't object. You assumed she didn't understand it. Leon cut in, voice now flat and unforgiving. You assumed she wouldn't notice what you slid in there. Vish Rao, the lead VC, cleared his throat. Let's be crystal clear. This clause, this reversion trigger, what does it mean for us? Leon didn't answer right away. He turned back to the packet and flipped to the Appendix Exhibit C. There, in excruciating detail, was the comparison matrix, Ava's schema, timestamped and versioned, laid next to Hydra's production architecture. It wasn't similar. It was identical. Even the internal variable naming conventions were mirrored, line for line. Leon exhaled. Means that the core intellectual property underpinning your flagship product is not legally owned by this company. It means you've been demonstrating and distributing a system that, by contract, reverts to a third-party holding company controlled by Ms. Ramirez. And it means every statement you've made to potential investors about proprietary tech is potentially fraudulent, finished the quiet VC with the Stanford ring. Vish leaned forward, voice low and sharp. This impacts valuation. That line dropped into the room like a guillotine. Darren's hands were now fists, knuckles pressed against the table. Sweat beaded on his upper lip. She blindsided us, he snapped, trying to regain footing. This is entrapment. She planned this. Ava didn't move, didn't flinch. Just locked eyes with him for the first time since walking in. No, she said. I read what you gave me. You didn't. Darren's jaw twitched. What exactly did I make you sign? His voice cracked at the end. Stephanie answered for her. You made her sign ownership back to herself. You handed her a clause you didn't understand and buried it in arrogance. That's not sabotage, that's negligence. The junior VC, who hadn't spoken all meeting, tilted her head slightly and asked, so what happens now? Leon looked up, tired. Now, you either renegotiate ownership under her terms, or you kill the round and prepare for litigation. Silence again. VCs weren't angry, they were clinical. They didn't care about Darren's pride or Ava's history. They cared about one thing, control. Who had it, who didn't, and what it would cost to regain. Vish turned to Ava slowly. You'd be willing to license it? Stephanie spoke before Ava could. Yes. At fair market royalty rates plus equity restoration tied to previous misattribution. Contingent on Darren's immediate removal from product oversight. Darren choked. What? Ava just kept her eyes locked on him. Calm, sharp, silent. She didn't gloat, didn't blink, she didn't have to. Because for the first time since he'd swaggered into her world talking about velocity and vision and platformer factors, he realized she was never beneath him. She'd just been waiting, watching, documenting. And now everyone else in the room knew it too. The wire never hit. The $80 million Series B, poised like a champagne cork ready to pop, solved into legal fog before lunch. The VCs paused everything. Not prudent to proceed mid-contingency, Vish had said with a voice like ice on steel. Translation. No one's cutting a check until the mess is cleaned up, and the mess has Darren's fingerprints all over it. By the next morning, Ava's holding company, Obsidian Torch, had been formally recognized by outside counsel as the legal owner of the Hydra framework's foundational architecture. The company's statement, crafted in 6 layers of PR lacquer, called it a cooperative clarification of legacy rights. But inside, it was a scramble. Half the engineering org was pulled into product audits. Outside compliance was brought in. The office mural, Hydra's blueprint, Ava's blueprint, was quietly painted over by end of week. Ava received the first equity offer by noon Friday. It wasn't generous. It was desperate. Goodwill olive branch meant to keep her quiet and keep the product alive. Stephanie skimmed it and laughed out loud before sliding it across Ava's table in her kitchen. They're offering 2.5%, she said. Contingent on a 10-year lockup, NDA, no public attribution, and a first right of refusal on any new IP you generate. Ava stirred her coffee. No counter? Stephanie asked. Ava just said, send mine. And her offer wasn't a branch, was a tree trunk dropped through their roof. 12% equity, public co-attribution as co-creator, royalty back pay based on historical volume, 2 board observer seats, and Darren, gone, not fired. Just quietly stepping back from product oversight during the resolution period. That's how they spun it. Legalese for you're radioactive now. Go sit in a corner while the adults mop up your arrogance. The company accepted. Eventually, because the alternative was setting fire to their own valuation. So on a rainy Tuesday morning, in a conference room with half the original energy drained from its walls, Ava signed the final agreement. Stephanie beside her. Company counsel across. A few VCs dialed in but muted. Ava didn't wear a power suit. No makeup. No dramatic pose. Just a simple black blouse and the same calm hand that had once outlined the data flow of an entire product on the back of a diner receipt while waiting for her soup. She signed with that hand. One stroke. One name. Then stood. The room was quiet, awkward. Everyone knew what had just happened, but no one knew how to speak it out loud. Except Ava. She turned to Darren, who sat in the corner now, no laptop, no audience, just a bruised man in an expensive jacket trying to look invisible. She didn't sneer. She didn't smile. She just said, cool and low, "You told me you own my reputation. Turns out you never read the fine print." And then she walked out. No applause, no ticker tape. Just the soft click of her heels on engineered hardwood and the quiet weight of victory carried not like a trophy, but like the blueprint it had always been. Cold, precise. Hers. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.